What's up YouTube? This is Dan the Fix-It Man. Got another quick video here for you. I'm going to show you how to change your front brake pads and your front rotors on a 2002 Mercedes CLK 430. Now the first thing I like to do is push the caliper piston back in so that we've got some room for the new pad material. In addition, we would not be able to pull this caliper off without pushing the caliper piston back in, because if you see down here, this rotor has got a really thick lip on the outside edge, one right here as well. That's the reason for replacing the rotors as well, even though it didn't wear down completely metal to metal. Thankfully, it's got this little sensor here. This has a little rod that goes into the pad so that when it wears down enough, it makes contact with the rotor, it sets off a warning light unless you know that you need to change your brake pads, and that's what's happened here. Went ahead and picked up new sensors for this as well, in addition to the OEM pads. The rotor is aftermarket, but I'll put all the links in the description on all the parts. But just to get started here, I'm going to wedge a screwdriver right up here, just a simple flathead screwdriver in between the pad and the rotor. I'm going to use two of them, and I'm just going to pry back and forth a little bit just to take a little bit of pressure. I'm going to do it down here at the bottom too. Take a little bit of that pressure in the caliper piston off of the rotor. I'm going to take you over here to the side. I'm going to pull the sensor off for right now. Okay, so I'm pulling it out here, and then just for the sake of showing you and prying this out, I'm going to pull the sensor out. There we go. You can see it's this part right here. And usually when these start to rub on the rotor, you need to plan on replacing these sensors as well. But with that sensor out of the way, now I can get a screwdriver right in here in between the pad and the rotor. A couple of them actually, and just kind of pry on that. Now I didn't think I was going to go that far, but that's pretty much all the way in. I meant to mention that we should probably take a look up here at our master cylinder first before doing that. And it's pretty full right now, but that's about as far as we needed to push it back in, so I'm not going to worry about removing any additional fluid. But if you do need to, it's a good idea to check that ahead of time. You know, if you're doing all four wheels, by the time you push in the fluid, unless it was very low, you probably will end up overflowing that. So you may want to pick up like a little turkey baster or even a rolled up paper towel to wick some of the old fluid out of there and make room for the fluid as it's pushed backwards through the system. Okay, now we can just come over here with a screwdriver and just pop this spring off. Just pop it out of these little holes here. That one there and down below. And our new kit does not come with a new spring, so we will be reusing this one here. Now let's go around to the back. Now this guy right here, this is where our caliper bolts are. Sometimes you can just use a fingernail and pop this little cap off like that, or sometimes you need to use a screwdriver. This is a T45 Torx, and just put it in there, and we can go ahead and loosen. Go ahead and loosen and remove these bolts, or sometimes you just loosen them and they won't slide all the way out, but that's okay. If you see up top here where that bolt is starting to come out, you can also just pry on that with a screwdriver to pop it all the way out. Same thing with this bottom one down here. I'll just use the screwdriver to pop that cap off, and then use our T45 Torx Bit to remove that. There we go. Just lift the caliper off. You see this inner pad is still stuck inside that caliper piston. It's got a little spring on the outside where it's wedged in. Now, just so we're not dropping this and putting stress on the brake line, I'm just going to grab a little bungee cord here. See if I can't hook it up around the ball joint there. Okay, you can see I just threw a little bungee cord on here just to hold that caliper up in place while we pull off this caliper bracket. That's the next thing we're going to pull off here. Now these two bolts right here, they're an 18 millimeter, and we need to take them off in order to pull off the rotor. I suggest a large breaker bar just to get them loose. That's what that looks like. You can see it's still got some of that thread lock on there. Just going to pull off this outside brake pad, so you can see how worn down that one is. And then you want to have one hand on this while you're taking out that last bolt, otherwise it'll drop. Now I forgot to mention that it was held on by a little Allen bolt there, an Allen head bolt. This is a 5 millimeter. See if we can loosen that. On the other side I ended up loosening this. I put a screwdriver up here in the top edge of the rotor, and then it would, you know, roll back on the caliper bracket. I forgot to do that this time, but let me see if I can just break it loose with just the impact here. Got it. That's what that one looks like. Also has thread lock on it. Pull off the old rotor. Now, anytime you change a rotor, it's a good idea to clean off any rust here on the hub. You know, where I live, it's pretty rust free for the most part in Southern California, but if you've got an area where you're prone to a lot of rust, it's a good idea to hit that with a brush and get it all cleaned up nicely before you put the new rotor on. Now, most new rotors have some sort of a anti-rust or anti-corrosion protection on them, some sort of an oil. So I just went ahead and hit that with some brake clean and got it wiped off. Now before I put this little lock bolt back in, I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit more of this blue thread locker on. Sometimes it's a good idea to just give that a tap, make sure it's fully seated, and then spin it. I'm just kind of looking at the edge here. It looks nice and true. Okay, now we can put the caliper bracket back on. Goes on just like that. And I went ahead and put as much Loctite as I've got. You can see that there was still quite a bit of Loctite or thread lock left on those bolts. So let's go ahead and get those started. Now, I believe the torque on these is right around 84 or 85 foot-pounds. I'll go ahead and look it up if I can, or if I get a chance, and I'll put it in the description for you. Now, before I pull out the other old pad here, like I said, I had pushed that piston most of the way back in. Maybe not all of the way, so I'm going to throw in this little caliper compression tool. It's really handy. It's kind of like a C-clamp, but it's got this plate here, and then you just turn this in. Again, double check, make sure you're not going to overflow that master cylinder. I'm looking at it right now, and it looks fine. But we are pretty much all the way pushed in right there. So we can set this tool aside. This is handy. I'll put a link in the description on where you can pick that up. It's pretty inexpensive, and it really helps make this a little bit easier. Okay, now I'm going to unhook the caliper and bring it over here, but before I put it back in, just grab the edges of that pad and pull it out of the way. See, it's got this little spring on there that holds it in place, or holds it in there, just like on the replacement one. Just come over here, and if you just put pressure on both sides, there we go. Make sure that that's locked back in. Make sure that those caliper bolts are pushed back out so that you can fit the caliper over. And then before you put the caliper back on, go ahead and put your outside pad in place. And it just kind of sits right up here. Okay, and then we can drop that caliper back down, line everything up. Perfect. Sometimes you just got to wiggle it around a little bit until those caliper bolts line up. Remember, that's the T45. We can get those started. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to use this little electric one here. It's a really, really handy little ratchet. Been using it a lot lately. Probably should have used it earlier to take these off. You're going to want to look up the torque on these. If I get a chance to look up that spec, I'll go ahead and put it in the description, or I'll put it somewhere up here. And then don't forget to snap these little caps back into place, top and bottom. Now we can put our spring back on. Just grab it like this, put it in the bottom one, and then hook the top one with your thumb on there, and then bring it around and press it in. And then I just kind of make sure that I push on that just a little bit. Make sure it's fully in there, not going to pop out. And then that brings us to our little sensor here. You can see there's a little hole in the end of the brake pad. Just kind of line that up with the hole, and then just press it in. And plugging it back in is just as easy. Just press it all the way in until it's seated. And you're done. Just remember to step on the brake pedal a few times until it's firm, which will push the brake caliper pistons back out, pushing those pads up against the rotor where they need to be. Verify your brake fluid level in the master cylinder once you're done before you close the hood. And remember to torque everythh per spec before you get back down the road. But brake parts that I used in the video, here's the pads. OEM Mercedes Benz A004-420-03-2041. The brake rotors that I used, not OEM, the Brake Best Select over at O'Reilly, 96-76-7 RGS. They look good to me. I think they're going to work out just fine. Hope you liked the video. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you don't mind. That does help me out. I'll also put a link in the description to another video I made on how to replace the rear brake pads for this same vehicle. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, again, I really would appreciate it. There will be a little link right over here where you can just click on that. But that does help me out. So thanks so much for watching, and good luck.